Ear. By J. Wdowski. Chapter 9. And Hogan stood up and walked across to the podium. She did not have Sonia Morningsun's gracefulness. And Hogan was petite, but a bit bottom-heavy. Her steps were forceful and solid to the podium. With one hand she pushed up her reading glasses on her face as she accepted the remote to the hologram with her other hand. "Thank you, Sonia." Pressing a button on the remote, she replaced the holographic image of Shing 4 with that of a very lifelike 153 centimeters tall biped creature standing before the human conference. This is a life-size image of a typical Shingnese. Due to their stronger gravitational homeworld, the Shingnese are smaller than we are, but much more muscular. They're built like dwarves. Captain Mahan stated. Yes, Captain Mahan, due to their stronger gravitational homeworld, the Shingnese are smaller than we are, but much more muscular. They have a large chest cavity rumored to have 4 sets of lungs and 2 hearts for improved oxygen intake and improved blood circulation. Rumored? What kind of scientific report is that? Sharply questioned Rebecca Stern. The Shingnese would never allow us to do a body scan of them of any sort. We, of course, have not had the opportunity to do an autopsy on a Shingnese cadaver. So my report is based on information reported to us from the Shingnese themselves and hypotheses derived from the external observations from our only 2 physical encounters. The Hawking's mission and reports from Captain Demi and his ship's doctor, Dr. Rapko, before their disappearance. Rebecca, as limited as our information is of the Shingnese, Dr. Hogan's report will bring us all up to speed on what we do know and understand about them. Glenn came to Anne's defense. "Thank you, Mr. Yeager," and continued her presentation as she zoomed in the image on the head and shoulders of the extremely realistic Shingnese hologram. The Shingnese have large nostrils for breathing, but in addition they have a slit on each side of their short, thick necks to optimize oxygen intake. Would hate to see them sneeze if they have a cold. Captain Mahan joked. The reports are it is not a pretty sight. And continued, we think this is due to Shing 4's thinner atmosphere. They also do not seem to have a sense of smell, as most of the known indigenous life forms on Shing 4. The less dense air makes odors very difficult to pick up. It is much like cave fish never developing eyes. Not useful in a dark world. The life forms on Shing 4 have never bothered to develop smell receptors. In spite of the lower dense air, is still dense enough for sound waves to travel, but not as effective as on Earth. Their evolutionary development has compensated this problem by developing extremely sensitive ears. When the Shingnese were invited aboard the Hawking, they often complained about the noises aboard the ship. Many times they requested that the Hawking's crew not speak so loudly. The crew was forced to speak in near whispers with them. When the Shingnese first entered the Hawking, they were shouting. The sensitivity of their ears forced them to also speak in whispers. On the surface of Shing, for the Hawking and Venture crews reported they needed to speak louder to the Shingnese to be heard, and found it difficult to hear the Shingnese clearly. They needed to resort to the use of hearing aids on the surface along with their oxygen tanks for additional air. Because of Shing 4's lower air density. Commander Granite asked to confirm. Yes, sound needs a medium to travel in. As we all know, in the vacuum of space, there is no medium for sound waves to travel through, so there is no sound. In contrast, whales and dolphins can communicate with each other from hundreds of miles away, because water is denser than air. Shing 4's thinner atmosphere has forced its life forms to develop extremely sensitive hearing. Their hearing is so sensitive that in our denser atmosphere, loud sounds are very uncomfortable for them. As bad as a teenager's loud music is for most adults, joked Rubel. Much worse, replied Dr. Hogan. So if we were boarded by the Shingnese, we could use sound as a weapon to impair them, asked Captain Mahan. Yes, I guess we could. And replied and continued her presentation. Due to the colder climate of Shing 4, the Shingnese are covered in a thick body hair. So thick that clothing is unnecessary for them. Interestingly, in spite the fact they stand upright and are not clothed, we are unable to distinguish the difference between their 2 sexes. Are they mammals? Asked Dr. Morningsun. Yes, Sonia, we do believe they are. They are warm-blooded, have body hair, and we have been told they do produce milk for their young. You said we are not able to distinguish their sexes. Yet they don't wear clothes, and their females produce milk. I assume they have breasts, asked Rubel with a slight smile. Unlike humans, they are much more similar to most other mammals, and do not have large developed mammary glands. Most mammals use scent to signal when the female is ovulating and ready for fertilization. Humans are much more visually oriented and do not use scent to signal ovulation. Human females do not go into heat and do not ovulate only once a year like most other mammals. Instead, their ovulation is not announced. This is the reason human females mate all year round. Dr. Morningstar stated, glancing at Captain Mahan. Yes. Dr. Hogan confirmed. Is also believed to be a reason to give males the incentive to hang around and help with providing for and protecting human young. Children, as any of you who are parents, know that they need many years to reach maturity, added the ship's psychologist, Dr. Joan Longo. Her stylish dyed bob-cut hair and bangs hid her actual age. Some never develop to be mature adults. Commander Granite stated from experience, "We do not have a mating season." And continued, "We, in contrast to other mammals, develop noticeable mammary glands as a visual signal of sexual maturity. Breasts, large or small, are not needed to produce milk." The other problem in distinguishing their sexes apart is the fact that Shingnese males are also capable in producing milk. The males produce milk. Captain Rubel responded in disbelief. Yes. According to our Shingnese sources, they do. It was an earlier evolutionary development. It seems that deaths during childbirth were much more common for Shingnese females than for us. Before modern scientific medicine, childbirth was the cause of death for 1 out of 3 women. For the Shingnese, it is 1 out of 2 would die from childbirth complications. If the mother died during childbirth, or shortly after, the fathers could still nurse their young, therefore increasing the chances of Shingnese offspring surviving. This proves that the Shingnese males must be more nurturing and peaceful compared to human males. They are clearly in tune with their feminine side, stated Rebecca with confidence. Female mammals have been known to be extremely aggressive, especially if they feel they are protecting their young. So, I do not see how you can come to that conclusion. And Hogan replied, "If they have felt cheated or wronged, many a woman has been known to be as vindictive and violent as any man. As William Congreve once said, heaven has no rage, like love to hatred turned, no hell of fury, like a woman scorned." Glenn added, "That is for sure." Sighed Captain Mahan. Studies have shown that women are no less aggressive than males. The difference is how they display their aggression. A Finnish study way back in 1992 found that girls would more often use indirect aggression. Gossip, spreading hurtful rumors, revealing the secrets of others without their permission. Dr. Joan Longo spoke up. Future studies found that cyberbullying was much more common a weapon of females than males. Women on a whole are physically less aggressive than men, but they are just as capable of aggression and violence. We will often use indirect aggression against our victims. Think about it. If you are facing a rabid dog, does it matter much if it is a male or a female? Dr. Longo concluded. "I agree," added Dr. Morningsun. "I would also never recommend getting between a mother bear and her cubs." Everyone knows that the world would be much more peaceful if run by women, defended Rebecca Stern of her first statement. Every intelligent, educated person knows that women are much more responsible and grown-up than men. Glenn could not believe the hypocrisy of her statement. Rebecca Stern was one of the most abrasive, aggressive, and vindictive people he had ever met. He would never recommend to anyone getting between Rebecca Stern and her ambitions. "I think you've been watching too many early 21st century sitcoms," responded Dr. Longo. "That was a cultural myth generated in those times in order to counter the long historical biases. That women were only suited to be daughters and wives. Historically, if they did not have a man caring for them, they would have been forced to spend their lives in a nunnery or in prostitution. But that is not the modern world." Rebecca was clearly steaming that her fellow women were not supporting her argument. She began to open her mouth to refute Dr. Longo when Glenn interrupted her. "All are very interesting points, but I think we should return to the subject at hand, the Shingnese." Glenn looked to and Hogan to continue her presentation. "Thanks, Mr. Yeager." Dr. Hogan changed the hologram from 1 Shingnese to 3 life-size Shingnese. The Shingnese are divided into 3 distinctive races based on the color of their hair, body type, and mouth structure. She moved the image of the thick white-haired Shingnese forward, making its leather skin and hairy face clearer for the group to see. The solid hologram image rotated slightly, ensuring all could see the details. It had a turtle-like beak, and its eyes were protected by thick eye slits. The whites, on average, are the physically strongest of the three races. They occupy the Arctic zones and higher altitudes of some mountain chains in the temperate zones. They have adapted to the harshest conditions on the planet. She then moved the image of a brown-haired Shingnese forward to the audience. The creature had larger double-lid eyes instead. Their eyes were oddly similar to humans of pure Caucasoid heritage. The browns originate from the temperate zones of the planet. Dr. Hogan, using the control, brought forward the third kind of Shingnese. The third race is known as the Greens, although as you can see, they are more an olive drab. They call themselves, excuse my pronunciation, the Hasith Essay, which means greens. From this we are assuming they do not have a large vocabulary for colors, or they may be colorblind. And smiled, and the room replied in a low chuckle, I am open to questions. I noticed in your holographic images they do not have lips, but more like a turtle's beak. Does this cause them problems for them to communicate? The Polo's ship's doctor asked. Well, only if they try to speak in English, joked, and you are correct about the whites and the browns. They do have a beak-like mouth structure. The greens, on the other hand, have a mouth structure much more similar with our own, lips, and even teeth. Browns and whites do not have teeth. Their main source of food is a shelled creature they eat in abundance. Their beaks can easily break through the shells, and according to the reports from a hawking, they use their exceptional long, powerful tongues to reach in and dig out the nourishments from the creatures. The unsettling observation was that the Shingnese do not cook the animals, but prefer them alive when they are eating them. That was a fact they strangely didn't put in the publicly released version of the Hawking's logs, stated Dr. Verne. The EG thought it may cause a prejudice towards our newly found alien friends. Glenn explained. What of our sixth guaranteed constitutional right, freedom of information? Asked Dr. Verne. I am sorry to say there are those in our government that feel they are above the Constitution. They often justify their denying our guaranteed constitutional rights in the name of social harmony and for the good of the general public, explained Glenn. It is for the good of the world, replied Rebecca. There are some things those not in higher levels of decision-making do not need to know. In that case, our so-called rights are nothing but a lie, replied Commander Granite. Those politicians have made the same pledge as I have as a military officer, to defend the Constitution, not their own positions of power. They are making decisions to suspend constitutional rights only to maintain social harmony, which is in the best interest of the public, defended Ambassador Stern. And who decides when it is in the best interest of the public? Asked Dr. Verne, a bit angry at what Rebecca Stern was saying. The leaders, of course, chosen by the public. She responded. How is the public able to choose the right leaders if those same leaders are denying them information? Asked Glenn. Rebecca did not have a reply for Glenn, so he turned his attention back to and Hogan to retake the control of the meeting. Taking back control, Dr. Hogan asked, any other questions? Yes, I wish you could broaden on the Shingnese ability to communicate with us, said Dr. Longo. The Greens, as I stated before, have mouths very similar to our own. Since they are from the warmer and lush tropical zones of their home world, they are omnivores, unlike the whites and browns who are both carnivores. The Greens can speak English and are used as translators. Is a position considered outside their racial caste? Outside their racial caste? Questioned Dr. Lopez from the chemistry department. Yes, as I said, out of their racial class. The Shingnese live in a very strict caste system. Whites are their military, police, and hunter group. Browns are their scholars, scientists, government officials, managers, and some herdsmen. The Greens are the laborers and farmers. For a Green to be an interpreter, working in the administrative level of their society, is highly irregular. Also, due to the beaks of the Shingnese whites and browns, they are unable to produce the sounds of ma, ba, pa, fa, and wa. Parrots and mockingbirds have beaks and are able to duplicate human languages, pointed out Commander Granite. That is true, yet the whites and browns either do not have that talent, or we think it may be out of pride or even arrogance that they refuse to speak our language, or even attempt to learn it. Hogan answered, the Greens for some reasons do not seem to have either of those handicaps in learning and speaking our language. We have hypothesized that perhaps, due to the Greens being more capable in learning and speaking English, this has somehow made the other two races consider learning English beneath them. What of those children who have mixed heritages? Sonia Morning Sun asked. There aren't any, and replied, We are not exactly sure if it is illegal, culturally forbidden, or biologically impossible. Our understanding is that they are all of the same species. Yet interracial coupling is unheard of in their society. Any other questions? If not, I thank you for your attention. And relinquish the podium for Ambassador Stern's report on the Shingnese culture and government structure.